we reveal the secret of the 7 count. This is the Kitsune clan, a group of sword enthusiasts who like cosplay, reenactment, and historical martial arts. If you have similar interests, feel welcomed. Training Filipino style stick fighting is clearly beneficial for your sword training because originally a lot of the Filipino styles were based on blade weapons and they have developed a lot of training routines that can be used also for the sword. So even for the hardcore sword fanatic, these types of training drills have a benefit. A common way of training Filipino stick fighting, or part of Filipino stick fighting, is the double stick type of drills, also known as Sinawali. There are many different Sinawali. There are some famous ones like the 6 count, that is what most people are used to, but there are further ones, and one of them is the 7 count. And a lot of people have trouble when learning this one because there's a secret and I will reveal it here. I will at first, step by step, introduce this Sinawali or drill with its 7 steps, and then we get to the background, how we can use didactics step by step to come to this drill much more naturally. The basic will be in fact the 6 count, so if you're not yet familiar with that one, get a bit of background. The classical 6 count Sinawali is seen as a prerequisite by us to learn the 7 count. As the name suggests, the 7 count is a sequence of 7 strikes with a double stick. As soon as you can perform the 7 strikes, you perform them in a row, and usually also with a partner to get to a really flowing type of action. The 7 strikes follow a specific order. This order is at first a bit erratic, but we will reveal that there's in fact a deep order in that sequence. Now, first strike, backhand, high, retracted. Second strike, forehand, low, also retracted. Third strike, backhand, drawn through, high, forehand, drawn through, high, low forehand, retracted, high, backhand, gone through, and high forehand, put through. That's the sequence, and as I already promised, it looks somehow arbitrary, but it fills to a nice little pattern, and there's a reason for that. Let's go back one step. Let's look at the normal 6 count, where we have 2 times 3 strikes, a forehand, a backhand, and another backhand that goes through and retracts, and that is high, low, and high. This is a really common exercise and is used by a lot of styles. It also gives a nice rhythm so people can find into the flow rather easily. Also, there's a lot of cross-referencing with this pattern of motion. If you're, for example, juggling or playing poi, the so-called Mexican 8 is exactly the same pattern of motion. If you take heavy clubs and perform the drill with it, you will end up with a similar pattern as seen here. Also, half of the 6 count make a 3 count, which is a common pattern in weaponless self-defense and can be used also to construct drills without the stick. Now, some of you may have already guessed, there's not only one type of 6 count, there are several. In fact, there are 64. 3 are commonly trained, the so-called high 6 count, then the normal, the high, and the low 6 count. So there are 3 of the 64 possibilities of height differences that can be transferred into a longer drill simply combining these 3 after each other. In theory, you can go through the really painful exercise and do all 64 height difference drills in a row. So start out 1 strike low, the first one, and then 5 high. And then the first one high and only the second low and the others high. and then the third low, the fourth low, the fifth, the sixth, and then you add more. You do the first and the second low, and then the first and the third, and so on until you have all of them. There are other variations like with reloading, with stabbing, or redondo, but what we now need is the so-called mirror six. This is the reverse of the normal six count, which means every time where I would usually use my right hand, I use my left one, and instead of a forehand, I do a backhand. Can be trained against the normal six count, and it also comes relatively natural. You can also perform it with the poi, for example. Now we can make the same fun as with the normal six count, height differences. And we choose now the third and the sixth as low strikes. That feels a bit strange at first, but if you can perform the mirror six, this is something you can learn very easily. And can you see it already or feel it if you perform it? We are almost at the seven count. These are six strikes that also occur like that in the seven count. What is missing is one strike that is a bit out of the pattern because one hand performs two strikes in one go or after each other. So not as in the normal six count where you always have one hand and then the other, but one hand does two strikes. This can be considered something like flowering that we could also do in normal six count. What makes the seven count so awkward is that we don't start at the same position as with the six count. Wait a moment, here comes the flowering leading us to the seven count. And now we could just see this flowering strike is in fact strike one of the normal seven count. If you now want to learn or even teach the seven count, I suggest go via this route that we just went along. Come from the mirror 7 or mirror 6, make it a 7 instead of trying to learn it from scratch. By the way, by adding another flowering symmetrically, we get to the 8 count and recognize how regular the pattern is overall. Whenever we learn or teach something, it's a good idea to refer to things that we already learned or taught, because then we can deeply root it, interconnect it, and in this way better remember it on the long run. I can only suggest to explore your martial arts for these types of patterns. They are everywhere, you just have to find them and then use them. Hope we could inspire you. See you around next time.